You don't belong here, sweetheart. The back of the plane is that way. That was the moment the entire cabin went silent. A man in a tailored suit, sipping pre-flight champagne, didn't just steal a seat, he tried to steal a woman's dignity. He thought she was nobody. He thought his platinum status and his frantic call to a buddy on the board made him untouchable. But he made one fatal mistake. He didn't check the manifest, and he certainly didn't check the news. Because the woman standing in the aisle wasn't just a passenger. She was the reason this plane was about to be grounded. And when the police marched on board seconds later, they weren't coming for her. Buckle up, because karma just cleared for takeoff. The rain at London Heathrow was relentless, a grey curtain that seemed to wash away the colour of the tarmac. Inside Terminal 5, however, the air was climate-controlled, scented with expensive duty-free perfume and the nervous energy of travellers. Beatrice Williams adjusted the collar of her trench coat. She was tired. It had been a 3-week marathon of negotiations in Berlin, Zurich, and finally London. She was looking forward to the quiet hum of the cabin, a glass of warm water with lemon, and 10 hours of uninterrupted sleep before landing at JFK. She glanced down at her boarding pass. Seat 1A. First class on British Airways, Flight 178 to New York. It wasn't a seat she took for granted. Beatrice had grown up in a cramped apartment in Chicago, the daughter of a nurse and a bus driver. Now, at 42, she was the founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics, a logistics software firm that had quietly revolutionized how global shipping containers were tracked. She didn't dress like a tech mogul, no hoodies, no flashy logos. She wore a simple charcoal pantsuit, comfortable loafers, and carried a worn leather satchel that contained a laptop worth more than most cars. Ms. Williams. The gate agent smiled, scanning her pass. Welcome back. We have you in 1A today. Priority boarding is open. Thank you, David, Beatrice said, offering a genuine smile. She liked remembering names. It was a habit from her father. A person's name is the most important sound in the world to them. B, he used to say. She walked down the jet bridge, the sound of her loafers muffled by the carpet. She was the first aboard from the lounge, or so she thought. Usually. 1A was the prime spot, private, quiet, the pinnacle of commercial flying. But when she stepped onto the plane and turned left into the first-class cabin, she stopped. Someone was already there. A man was settled into seat 1A. He was white, perhaps in his late 50s, with silver hair slicked back and a jawline that suggested he clenched his teeth often. He was wearing a navy bespoke suit that screamed Savile Row. His jacket was already hung up, his shoes were off, and he was typing furiously on a phone, a glass of champagne already perched on the console next to him. Beatrice checked her boarding pass again. 1A. Definitely 1A. She took a breath. Mistakes happened. Double bookings were rare in first, but computer glitches existed. She stepped forward, her voice calm and polite. Excuse me, sir. The man didn't look up. He kept typing, his brow furrowed. Champagne's fine, thanks. Just keep it coming. Beatrice blinked. I'm not the flight attendant. I believe you're in my seat. That got his attention. The man stopped typing. He slowly lowered the phone, turning his head to look at her. His eyes scanned her from her natural hair, pulled back in a bun, down to her sensible loafers. He didn't look impressed. In fact, he looked annoyed, as if a fly had buzzed into his airspace. I beg your pardon. His accent was American, East Coast, old money. "I have seat 1A, Beatrice said, holding up her pass so he could see it. "I think there might be a mix-up." The man laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, devoid of humor. "There's no mix-up. I'm Preston Walsh. I sit in 1A, always." He turned back to his phone. "Check your ticket again. You're probably in 11A. Economy Plus is back through the galley." The dismissal was total. It was a physical blow. Beatrice felt a prickle of heat rise up her neck, but she pushed it down. She was a CEO. She dealt with hostile boardrooms and aggressive acquisitions. She didn't lose her cool over a seat. "Mr. Walsh," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming firmer. "I don't care if you're the King of England. My ticket says 1A. You are in my seat. Please move." Preston Walsh sighed, a theatrical exhale that signaled he was dealing with an idiot. He picked up his champagne and took a slow sip, making eye contact with her over the rim of the glass. "Look," he said, putting the glass down, "I don't know how you got upgraded, or who you know, or what affirmative action lottery you won today. But I have a meeting in New York that is worth more than this entire plane. I need to work. I need this space. Go find a stewardess and tell them Preston Walsh said to find you another seat. They'll know what to do." He waved his hand, a shooing motion. "Go on now." Beatrice stood rooted to the spot. It wasn't just the rudeness, it was the casual, comfortable bigotry, the assumption that her presence in first class was a mistake, a lottery win, a charity case. She wasn't going anywhere. The cabin was filling up. A young couple settled into 2A and 2K, watching the interaction with wide eyes. A businessman in 3A paused while hanging his coat, his ears pricked. "Is there a problem here?" The voice came from the galley. A flight attendant, her name tag reading Jennifer, hurried over. She looked stressed. The flight was fully booked, and they were already running 5 minutes behind schedule due to the weather. "Yes, Jennifer, there is," Beatrice said, not taking her eyes off Preston. "This gentleman is in my seat. I have a valid boarding pass for 1A. She handed the pass to Jennifer. The flight attendant scanned it, then looked at the seat map on her tablet. She frowned. Then she looked at Preston Walsh. "Mr. Walsh," Jennifer said, her tone cautious. She clearly knew who he was. "May I see your boarding pass? Please." Preston didn't reach for his pass. He didn't even unlock his phone. "I don't need a pass. Jennifer, Gordon booked this for me this morning. You know the drill. Last-minute addition. System probably hasn't updated yet. Gordon." Jennifer paled slightly. "You mean Gordon Hayes, the Director of Operations?" "The very same." Preston smiled, a shark-like baring of teeth. "We were at Oxford together. I called him an hour ago. He said he'd clear 1A for me. So, if there's a double booking, it's clearly an administrative error on your end. And since I'm already seated and have a drink..." He gestured around him. "Possession is 9/10 of the law, isn't it?" Jennifer looked caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, she had a passenger with a valid ticket standing in the aisle. On the other hand, she had a man claiming personal friendship with the airline's Director of Operations, a man who looked the part of a VIP nightmare. "Mom," Jennifer turned to Beatrice, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm so sorry. Mr. Walsh is a frequent flyer with us, a gold guest list member. If he spoke to Mr. Hayes, I don't care who he spoke to. Beatrice said, her voice clear and ringing in the quiet cabin. I paid $12,000 for this seat. I booked it 2 weeks ago. I have the boarding pass. He has a story about an old college buddy. Preston spun around in the seat, his face flushing red. It's not a story. I am the senior partner at Sterling and Lockwood. Do you know who we are? We handle litigation for half the Fortune 500. If you don't get this woman out of my face, I will have this airline tied up in court for so long your grandchildren will be paying the legal fees. He pointed a finger at Beatrice. And you're making a scene. It's embarrassing. You're delaying the flight. Just take the compensation and sit in the back. You'll probably be more comfortable there anyway. Less pressure to use the right fork. The insult hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Beatrice felt a cold calm wash over her. It was the same calm she felt right before she closed a deal that destroyed a competitor. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "You're right," Beatrice said softly. "I am delaying the flight, and I'd hate to be the cause of a disturbance." She looked at Jennifer. "Is there another seat in first?" Jennifer looked like she wanted to cry. "No, Mom. We are completely full. I have a seat in Club World, business class. It's a lie-flat bed. I can issue you a refund for the difference immediately, plus a travel voucher for $5,000. It was a downgrade, a humiliation. Beatrice, the CEO of a multinational corporation, was being asked to move for a man who hadn't even shown a ticket, purely because he was loud, white, and dropped a name. Preston smirked, turning back to his window. "See, problem solved. Smart girl." Beatrice looked at the back of his head. She looked at Jennifer's pleading eyes. She looked at the other passengers, some of whom had their phones out, recording. She realized something. If she fought this now, physically or screaming, she would be the angry black woman. She would be the one escorted off by security. Preston counted on that. He weaponized social expectations. But Preston didn't know who she was. He didn't know that Sterling and Lockwood was currently auditing a merger for a company called Vanguard Logistics. And he certainly didn't know that Beatrice had just spent 3 weeks in Europe, secretly negotiating the acquisition of Vanguard. She wasn't just a passenger. In about 48 hours, once the papers were signed, she would effectively be his boss's biggest client. But there was something else, something buzzing in her pocket. A text message she had received 5 minutes ago from her COO, which she hadn't had time to check until now. She glanced at the screen. "Sender Mark, COO urgent. Call me. The deal with Vanguard is compromised. FBI is involved. It's bad. B, it's about the finances." Beatrice's mind raced. If the Vanguard deal was compromised, and Preston Walsh was the senior partner at the law firm auditing them, a slow, dangerous smile touched her lips. "Fine," Beatrice said. "I'll take the business class seat." Preston chuckled. "Good decision. However," Beatrice added, looking at Jennifer, "I want it noted in the flight log that I was involuntarily downgraded, despite holding a valid ticket, to accommodate a passenger with no boarding pass." "I will log it, Mom. I promise," Jennifer said, relief flooding her face. Beatrice grabbed her bag. As she turned to leave the first-class cabin, she leaned down close to Preston's ear. "Enjoy the seat, Mr. Walsh. I have a feeling it's the last comfortable moment you're going to have for a very long time." Preston waved her away without looking. Yeah. Save the drama for your blog." Beatrice walked back to business class. Head high. She sat in seat 14F. She didn't recline. She didn't order a drink. She opened her phone and dialed her COO. "Mark," she whispered, "I'm on the plane. Tell me everything, and tell me if Sterling and Lockwood is implicated." There was a pause on the line. "Implicated isn't the word," Mark said, his voice shaking. "They're the architects. It's a massive embezzlement scheme. The SEC and the FBI just raided the New York offices an hour ago. They're looking for the partners. They have warrants." Beatrice looked out the window at the rain. "Do they have a warrant for a Preston Walsh?" "Walsh. He's the main signatory. He's the guy they want most." "Why?" "Because," Beatrice said, watching the wing flaps extend. "He's sitting in seat 1A, drinking champagne. Is the plane in the air?" "Not yet. We're taxiing." "If that plane takes off. He's in international jurisdiction for 7 hours. He might divert. He might run. The feds need to know he's there." Beatrice hung up. She pressed the call button. Jennifer appeared instantly, looking guilty. "Ms. Williams, can I get you anything? Again, I am so sorry." "Jennifer," Beatrice said, her voice devoid of anger, replaced by pure, steel command. "I need you to tell the captain to stop the plane." What?" "I'm not joking. You need to return to the gate. Immediately. Ms. Williams, I know you're upset about the seat, but we can't ground a flight because—" "It's not about the seat." Beatrice cut her off. She held up her phone, showing a news alert that had just popped up on CNN Business. "Breaking massive fraud exposed at Sterling and Lockwood. Senior partners fugitive." "You have a fugitive in seat 1A, Beatrice said calmly. "And unless you want this airline to be accused of aiding and abetting a federal fugitive fleeing the country, you will turn this plane around. Now." The cockpit of a Boeing 777 is a fortress of calm. Usually. Captain David Miller, a veteran with 30 years of flying experience, was running through the pre-takeoff checklist when the intercom buzzed. It was the purser, Jennifer. "Skipper, you need to see this," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm coming in." Miller frowned. Flight attendants didn't interrupt the checklist unless the cabin was on fire. He unlocked the door. Jennifer stepped in, pale as a ghost, holding a passenger's phone. "What is it?" "Jen, we're third in line for the runway." "Read this," she said, thrusting the phone at him. It was the CNN alert Beatrice had shown her. "Breaking multi-billion-dollar fraud at Sterling and Lockwood. Senior partners fugitive. FBI issues arrest warrants." Miller read it twice. "Okay, that's big news. But why am I looking at it?" "Because," Jennifer whispered, "Preston Walsh is in seat 1A. He doesn't have a boarding pass. He bullied his way on by name-dropping Gordon Hayes, and the woman he kicked out. The woman who owns this phone. She says if we take off, we're aiding a fugitive." Captain Miller looked at the name on the screen. Preston Walsh. Then he looked at his manifest. There was no Walsh listed. The passenger in 1A was supposed to be a Beatrice Williams. "He's not on the manifest?" Miller asked sharply. "No, sir. He claimed it was a last-minute VIP edition. You know how Hayes is. We were scared to say no." Miller swore under his breath. He grabbed his headset. "Tower, this is Speedbird 178. We have a situation on board, requesting permission to return to the gate immediately." "Speedbird 178, what is the nature of the emergency medical?" "Negative. Tower, security. We have an unauthorized passenger on board. Possible fugitive." There was a pause on the radio. Then, a voice that was all business. "Copy that. Speedbird, vacate the taxiway immediately via Alpha 6. Police are being notified. Do not repeat. Do not open the doors until authorities are present." Back in the cabin, the plane lurched as it made a sharp turn off the taxiway. The engines, which had been spooling up for takeoff, whined down into a low idle. In seat 1A, Preston Walsh looked up from his champagne, annoyed. "Now what?" he muttered. He flagged down a passing flight attendant. "Why are we turning? I have a dinner reservation at Le Bernardin in 8 hours. If we're delayed, I'm going to be very unhappy." "I'm not sure, sir," the flight attendant said, her face tight. "The captain will make an announcement shortly." "Unbelievable," Preston groaned. He pulled out his phone to text Gordon again, but there was no signal on the ground. "First, the affirmative action hire tries to steal my seat. Now the pilot can't decide where he's going. Competence is dead in this country." He looked back toward business class, trying to spot the woman. He couldn't see her, but he smiled to himself. She's probably back there, crying into her orange juice, he thought. Some people just need to learn their place. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. I apologize for the interruption. We have a minor administrative discrepancy with the passenger manifest that we need to clear up before we can depart. We're returning to the gate. It should only take a few moments. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." "Administrative discrepancy." Preston laughed out loud. "That woman, she must have made a complaint. Unbelievable. She's actually grounded the plane because she didn't get her way." He shook his head, finishing his drink. "Well," he said to the empty seat next to him, "if she thinks this is going to get her seat back, she's delusional. I'm Preston Walsh. I don't move." The plane taxied back to the gate. It felt like a funeral procession. The rain lashed against the windows, harder now. When the plane finally came to a halt, the fasten seatbelt sign didn't turn off. Instead, the main cabin door opened with a hiss. Preston expected a gate agent. He expected an apology. He expected someone to come back and drag the woman off the plane for causing a disturbance. What he didn't expect was the sight of 4 officers from the Metropolitan Police, wearing tactical vests, marching onto the plane. Behind them were 2 men in suits who looked distinctly American, diplomatic security service. The cabin went deadly silent. Preston frowned. "Finally," he said, loud enough for the people in row 2 to hear. "Arrest her and let's go." The officers moved down the aisle. They didn't look at business class. They didn't look at economy. They walked straight into the first-class cabin. They stopped at row 1. One of the American agents stepped forward. He held up a badge. "Preston Walsh." Preston blinked. He set his glass down, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Yes, are you here about the delay? I demand to know who authorized this." "Preston Walsh," the agent repeated, his voice like grinding stones. "I am Special Agent Carter with the FBI, operating with the permission of the UK authorities. You are under arrest." Preston laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Arrest for what, a seat dispute? You have to be joking." "Do you know who I am? I'm a senior partner at Sterling and Lockwood." Agent Carter finished for him. "We know. That's why you're under arrest. Securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and flight to avoid prosecution." Preston's face went from flushed to chalk white in a nanosecond. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving only a trembling, hollow shell. That's impossible, he stammered. I was just in the office. Everything is fine. I'm going to New York for a meeting. We know about the meeting. Mr. Walsh, Carter said. We also know about the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands you were planning to transfer the Vanguard merger funds to. You didn't think we were watching the wire transfers. Preston looked around the cabin. Every eye was on him. The young couple in row 2 were filming. The businessman in 3A was staring with his mouth open. "Stand up," a British officer ordered. "Hands behind your back." "No," Preston shouted, grabbing the armrests. "You can't do this. I have rights. I called Gordon Hayes. He knows I'm here." "Mr. Hayes is currently answering questions from the authorities about how a fugitive got onto a secure flight without a boarding pass," Agent Carter said dryly. "I don't think he can help you right now." They hauled him out of the seat. The expensive Savile Row suit bunched up as they slapped the handcuffs on him. The metal clicked shut, a sound that echoed in the silent cabin. As they dragged him into the aisle, Preston began to struggle. "This is a mistake. A huge mistake, that woman. Where is she? She set me up. She's the one you want." He scanned the aisle frantically, his eyes wild. And then he saw her. Beatrice Williams was standing at the curtain, dividing first and business class. She was leaning against the bulkhead, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She hadn't been crying. She hadn't been hiding. Her. Preston screamed, lunging toward her, held back only by the officers. "She's the problem. She's a nobody. She stole my seat." Agent Carter paused. He looked at Beatrice. Then, to Preston's horror, the agent nodded at her respectfully. "Ms. Williams," Carter said. "Thank you for the call. We had lost his trace at the airport. If the plane had taken off, he would have been in the air for 7 hours." Beatrice finished calmly. "Plenty of time to move the money." Preston stopped struggling. He stared at Beatrice. You called them." Beatrice stepped forward, entering the first-class cabin. She looked at the empty seat 1A, then back at Preston. "I didn't steal your seat. Preston," she said, her voice soft but carrying the weight of a judge's gavel. "I own the company you were trying to rob." The silence in the cabin was so absolute you could hear the rain hitting the fuselage. Preston's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. You own Apex Dynamics," Beatrice said. "We're the parent company acquiring Vanguard Logistics, the merger you were auditing, the merger you were trying to siphon $50 million from." Preston's knees buckled. The officers had to hold him up. "I didn't recognize you," he whispered. You don't look like a CEO." Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "Because I'm a black woman in a pantsuit and loafers. Because I don't need to scream at flight attendants to feel important." She took a step closer, invading his personal space, just as he had invaded hers earlier. "You saw a woman you thought was weak," she said. "You saw a seat you thought you deserved. You were so busy looking down on me, you didn't realize I was the one signing your paychecks." She turned to Agent Carter. "He mentioned a Gordon Hayes helped him bypass security checks. You might want to look into that." "We are already on it, Ms. Williams," Carter said. "We have a team at the airline's HQ right now." "Good." Beatrice looked back at Preston. "You told me to go to the back of the plane. You said I didn't belong here." She gestured to the open door of the aircraft, where the cold, grey London air was waiting. "Get off my plane," Preston. The officers shoved him forward. Preston Walsh, the man who had boarded like a king, was dragged off like a common criminal. He was weeping now, incoherent sobs about his reputation, his life, his money. As he was led out, the passengers in the cabin erupted. It started with a slow clap from the businessman in 3A. Then the young couple joined in. Then the people in economy, who had craned their necks to see what was happening, started cheering. Beatrice didn't smile. She just watched until he was gone. Agent Carter tipped his head. "We'll need a statement from you, Ms. Williams, but we can do it in New York. We don't want to delay you any further." "Thank you, Agent." The police left. The door closed. The cabin was buzzing with energy. People were high-fiving. The flight attendants looked like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. Jennifer, the purser, walked up to Beatrice. She was holding a fresh glass of champagne. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Ms. Williams," she said, her eyes wet. I don't know what to say. I am so sorry I didn't stand up for you earlier. I was intimidated. It was wrong." Beatrice took the glass. She looked at the young woman. "You were in a tough spot, Jennifer. He used power to bully you. That's what men like him do. But remember this feeling. Next time someone tries to make you feel small so they can feel big, remember Preston Walsh in handcuffs." Jennifer nodded, wiping a tear. "I will. I promise. Please, take your seat. 1A is ready for you. We changed the sheets. We sanitized everything." Beatrice looked at seat 1A. It was the best seat on the plane. It was hers. She had paid for it. She had earned it. But then she looked behind her. In seat 2A, there was a young black girl, maybe 10 years old, traveling with her father. The girl was looking at Beatrice with wide, awestruck eyes. She was holding a book about airplanes. Beatrice smiled. "Actually, Jennifer," Beatrice said, loud enough for the cabin to hear, "I think I'm okay in 14F. I have some work to do, and I like the view from the wing." She turned to the father in 2A. "Excuse me, sir. Would your daughter like to sit in the cockpit for a minute? I think Captain Miller might give her a tour while we wait for a new slot. And maybe she'd like to try out seat 1A for the flight. It's a bit bigger than her current one." The father looked stunned. Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I think she looks like a future CEO. She should get used to the view from the front." The little girl squealed. The cabin burst into applause again, warmer this time, louder. Beatrice walked back to business class, her satchel over her shoulder. She sat down in 14F. She was tired, yes, but she felt lighter than she had in years. She took out her phone. She had one more call to make. "Sender Mark, COO. Did they get him? Reply, Beatrice got him. And Mark, cancel the contract with Sterling and Lockwood. And tell legal to start drafting a lawsuit against the airline for security breaches. We're going to shake things up." She put the phone away and closed her eyes. The plane began to push back from the gate. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Miller's voice came over the intercom, sounding cheerful. "We have been cleared for immediate departure. Next stop, New York." Beatrice smiled. The justice felt better than the champagne. But the story wasn't over, because while Preston Walsh was going to jail, the system that created him, the Gordon Hayes of the world, the silent board members, was still out there. And Beatrice Williams was just getting started. As the plane lifted off, soaring above the grey clouds of London and breaking into the blinding sunlight above, Beatrice opened her laptop. She wasn't just going to New York to sign a deal. She was going to war. The flight to New York was quiet, but the world below was anything but. By the time British Airways Flight 178 touched down at JFK, the video of Preston Walsh being dragged off the plane had been viewed 40 million times. The young couple in row 2 had uploaded it before the cabin doors even closed in London. The hashtag #SeatThief was trending globally, but so was hashtag CEO Beatrice. Beatrice turned on her phone as the plane taxied. It nearly vibrated out of her hand. Missed calls from CNN, BBC, the New York Times, and a dozen numbers she didn't recognize. But the first message she opened was from Mark, her COO, Mark. The FBI seized Walsh's laptop at Heathrow. They found the encrypted ledger. It's not just embezzlement. It's systematic bribery. He has a list of people on his payroll, including someone at the airline. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. She typed back quickly. Beatrice Gordon Hayes. Mark top of the list. Walsh was paying him $10,000 a flight to clear customs bypasses and VIP security lanes. They were moving cash. Physical cash. Beatrice let out a slow breath. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was a transnational crime ring operating out of a first-class cabin. When she walked off the jet bridge, she wasn't greeted by a driver. She was met by a wall of flashing lights. Reporters were shouting her name. Ms. Williams. Is it true you grounded the plane? Ms. Williams, did Preston Walsh threaten you? Ms. Williams, are you suing the airline? Beatrice paused. She saw her security team pushing through the crowd, led by her head of security, a massive man named Jerome. But she held up a hand. She stepped toward the nearest microphone, a calm eye in the center of the hurricane. I have a brief statement, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. The crowd hushed. Today, a man tried to move me because he believed his status made him superior to my humanity. He found out that status doesn't protect you from the law. I want to be clear, this was not a dispute over legroom. This was a dispute over integrity. And integrity won. She looked directly into the camera lens. To the board of directors at Sterling and Lockwood, I will see you at the merger meeting tomorrow morning. Bring your lawyers. You're going to need them. She turned and walked away, flanked by Jerome, leaving the press in a frenzy. Inside the SUV, the atmosphere was tense. Mark was already there, typing on 2 laptops at once. It's a bloodbath, Mark said without looking up. Sterling and Lockwood stock dropped 14% since the arrest. They're trying to spin it. They released a statement saying Walsh was a rogue partner, acting alone. Rogue partner, Beatrice laughed dryly. He was the senior partner. He signed the audit, and he had the director of airline operations in his pocket. Speaking of which, Mark turned a laptop screen toward her. Gordon Hayes just resigned. Beatrice looked at the headline, British Airways exec resigned citing health reasons. Health reasons? Beatrice scoffed. He's trying to run. He knows Walsh is going to talk to cut a deal. What do you want to do? The merger is scheduled for 9:00 a.m. We can delay. We can cancel. Beatrice looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, glittering in the twilight. Cancel, she whispered. Absolutely not. We're going to acquire Vanguard, but the price just went down, and Sterling and Lockwood, they aren't getting a dime of their closing fees. In fact, I think I'm going to ask for a refund. The conference room at Vanguard Logistics was located on the 40th floor of a glass tower in Hudson Yards. It smelled of fear and stale coffee. The Vanguard board of directors sat on one side of the massive mahogany table. They looked like men facing a firing squad. On the other side sat the legal team from Sterling and Lockwood, led by Arthur Sterling himself, the founding partner. He was a legend in New York law, a man who had buried senators and saved billionaires. Today, however, he looked tired. The clock struck 9 a.m. The double doors opened. Beatrice Williams walked in. She wasn't wearing the travel clothes from yesterday. She was wearing a cream-colored power suit, sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't carry a heavy satchel this time. She carried a single, thin folder. Mark walked a step behind her. Jerome stood by the door, arms crossed. "Gentlemen," Beatrice said, taking the seat at the head of the table. She didn't shake hands. "Ms. Williams," Arthur Sterling began, his voice like oiled gravel. "First, let me express our deepest apologies for the unfortunate incident with Mr. Walsh. I want to assure you, his actions were entirely his own. We are as shocked as you are." "Are you?" Beatrice asked, placing the folder on the table. She didn't open it. "Of course." Arthur smiled, a tight, practiced expression. "We have already terminated his partnership. We are cooperating fully with the FBI. Now, regarding the merger, we are prepared to proceed. The audit is sound." "The audit," Beatrice said, tapping the folder, "was signed by a man currently in a federal holding cell for embezzlement. A technicality." Arthur waved a hand. "The numbers were verified by junior associates. The deal is solid. Vanguard is a healthy company." Beatrice looked at the Vanguard CEO. A man named Robert. He was sweating. "Robert," Beatrice said softly, "did you know what?" Robert stammered. "Did you know that Preston Walsh was using the merger accounts to launder money for a cartel in South America? Did you know that the consulting fees you were paying to a shell company in the Cayman Islands were actually going to his personal jet fund?" Silence descended on the room. It was heavy, suffocating. Arthur Sterling stood up, his face reddening. "This is preposterous. These are baseless accusations. You cannot come in here and slander a 60-year-old firm based on the actions of one bad apple." Beatrice finally opened the folder. She slid a single piece of paper across the table to Arthur. It was a photocopy of an email from Arthur Sterling to Preston Walsh. Subject the Vanguard account. Clean it up. Preston, if the auditors see the gap in the logistics fund, we're all done. Move the assets to the offshore shell before the acquisition closes. Use the BA contact if you have to fly it out physically. Arthur Sterling froze. The color drained from his face so fast. He looked like a corpse. "You see," Beatrice said, her voice conversational, "Walsh didn't just have a laptop. He had an insurance policy. He kept every email, and since he's facing 20 years in prison, he was very eager to share them with my lawyers this morning in exchange for a recommendation of leniency." She leaned forward. "You weren't shocked, Arthur. You ordered it." The Vanguard directors gasped. Robert, the CEO, put his head in his hands. "The FBI is in the lobby, Arthur," Beatrice said calmly. "They're waiting for you to finish your coffee." Arthur Sterling slumped into his chair. The legend of New York law crumbled in seconds. Beatrice turned to the Vanguard board. "Now, about this merger." We can renegotiate," Robert said, his voice shaking. "We had no idea about the laundering. Please, Beatrice, if you walk away, Vanguard collapses. 3,000 people lose their jobs." Beatrice looked at him. She thought about her father, the bus driver. She thought about the people in the warehouses, the drivers, The logistics coordinators. They were innocent. They shouldn't pay for the crimes of men in suits. "I'm not walking away," Beatrice said. "I'm buying Vanguard. But the price is changing." "Name your price," Robert whispered. "I'm lowering the offer by 20% to cover the forensic accounting we'll need to do to clean up this mess. And—" She pointed at the empty chairs where the Sterling and Lockwood lawyers sat, stunned and silent. "We are firing Sterling and Lockwood immediately, and we are suing them for malpractice and fraud. Any settlement money we win goes into a bonus fund for the Vanguard employees." Robert looked up, hope sparking in his eyes. "Done. Absolutely done." "One more thing," Beatrice said. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number, putting it on speaker. "British Airways, Executive Office. This is Sarah. Sarah, this is Beatrice Williams. I'm sitting with the board of Vanguard Logistics. We spend about $40 million a year on corporate travel." "Yes, Ms. Williams, we are so honored to have you as a client. We heard about the incident, and we are—" "Sarah," Beatrice cut her off. "I want to know about Gordon Hayes. Mr. Hayes has resigned, Ma'am." "Resignation isn't enough," Beatrice said. "I want a public statement from the airline admitting that your director of operations bypassed security protocols for cash. I want an independent audit of your VIP services, and I want it by 5 p.m. today." "Ma'am, that's highly sensitive. Our legal department." "If I don't see the statement," Beatrice said, "Vanguard and Apex Dynamics will move our exclusive contract to Delta Airlines by 5:01 p.m. There was a frantic shuffling on the other end of the line. Then, a new voice. The CIO of the airline. "Ms. Williams, this is the COO. You'll have your statement, and we are pressing charges against Mr. Hayes ourselves." "Good," Beatrice said. "And one last request. The flight crew on Flight 178, Captain Miller and Jennifer the Purser. Yes, give them a raise, and tell Jennifer she's invited to my company Christmas party." Beatrice hung up. She stood up and buttoned her jacket. The room was silent, but it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of respect. "Gentlemen," Beatrice said, "we have a lot of work to do. Let's get started." Arthur Sterling was escorted out by the FBI 5 minutes later. Beatrice didn't watch him go. She was already drawing diagrams on the whiteboard, mapping out the future of her new empire. 6 months later, the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel in New York was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. It was the annual Titans of Industry Gala, an event where the city's power players gathered to pat themselves on the back. But tonight, the mood was different. The air crackled with a specific kind of anticipation. At the center table, Beatrice Williams sat quietly, sipping sparkling water. She wore a deep emerald gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, a stark contrast to the grey pantsuit she had worn on that rainy day at Heathrow. Next to her sat Mark, her COO, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo, and a young woman named Jennifer, who looked like she was in a dream. Jennifer wasn't pouring drinks anymore. She was now the director of corporate travel for Apex Vanguard, a position Beatrice had created specifically for her. She handled the logistics for thousands of employees, ensuring that every single one of them, from the janitors to the VPs, was treated with dignity when they traveled. "Nervous?" Mark whispered to Beatrice. "No." Beatrice smiled, her eyes scanning the room. "I'm just observing." She was looking at the empty table near the back. the table that had been reserved for Sterling and Lockwood every year for the past 2 decades. Tonight, it was gone. The fallout had been nuclear. Following the raid on the Vanguard offices, the dominoes had fallen with terrifying speed. Preston Walsh, stripped of his suit and his arrogance, had turned state's witness within 48 hours. He had sung like a canary, implicating Arthur Sterling in a decade-long scheme of money laundering for offshore cartels. The trial had been the media event of the year. The Wall Street Journal had run a 6-part exposé titled "The First Class Fraud." Preston was currently serving a 15-year sentence in a federal correctional facility in upstate New York. His assets, the Hamptons house, the bespoke suits, the wine collection had all been seized to pay back the victims of the pension fund he had raided. Gordon Hayes, the British Airways executive who had sold his integrity for cash, hadn't fared much better. He was serving 5 years in a UK prison for corruption and endangering aviation safety. The airline, desperate to save face, had launched a massive internal audit and public apology campaign, pledging millions to diversity scholarships in Beatrice's name. But the sweetest justice was reserved for Arthur Sterling. The legal titan who had sneered at Beatrice in the boardroom was now disbarred, bankrupt, and awaiting his own sentencing. His firm, once a pillar of New York law, had dissolved in disgrace. The name Sterling was no longer a symbol of power. It was a cautionary tale whispered in law schools. And now, the voice of the host boomed from the stage, interrupting Beatrice's thoughts. It is my distinct honor to introduce our Executive of the Year. A woman who not only redefined global logistics, but reminded us all that true leadership isn't about the seat you take, but the stand you make. Please welcome Beatrice Williams. The room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. People stood up. Beatrice walked to the stage. The spotlight was warm on her face. She adjusted the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces, faces that, years ago, wouldn't have looked twice at a bus driver's daughter from Chicago. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "When I was asked to speak tonight, I was told to talk about strategy, about synergies, about the bottom line." She paused. "But the most important lesson I learned this year didn't come from a spreadsheet. It happened on a rainy tarmac in London. In seat 1A, a ripple of recognition went through the crowd. Everyone knew the story. "A man told me I didn't belong," Beatrice said. "He looked at my face, my hair, my gender, and he decided my value. He thought a power was something you hoarded, something you used to push others down so you could have more legroom." She looked over at Jennifer, who was beaming with tears in her eyes. "But power is not a finite resource. It's not a zero-sum game. Real power is the ability to recognize the value in everyone. It's the flight attendant who stands up for a passenger. It's the pilot who turns the plane around for what's right. It's the quiet dignity of knowing who you are, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise." Beatrice took a breath. "I accepted a settlement from the airline last week, $5 million, and I'm happy to announce that every penny of it has gone into the 1A Foundation." The crowd gasped. "Starting this year, we will provide full scholarships for 50 young women of color to attend flight school and aviation engineering programs. We are going to fill the cockpits, the boardrooms, and yes, the first-class cabins, with people who know that they belonged there." The applause was deafening this time. Mark was wiping his eyes. Even the waiters stopped to clap. Beatrice smiled. "So, to anyone who has ever been told to move to the back, Stay in your seat. The view is much better from the front." As she walked off stage, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. She opened it. It was a picture. It was from the father of the little girl on the plane, the one Beatrice had offered the seat to. The photo showed the girl, now a few inches taller, standing in front of a Cessna training plane, wearing a flight jacket that was slightly too big for her. She was giving a thumbs up. Caption: "She took her first lesson today. She says she's going to fly you to your next meeting. Thank you. Captain Williams." Beatrice laughed, a pure, joyful sound. She walked back to her table, grabbed her glass of sparkling water, and raised it to Jennifer. "To the future," Beatrice said. "To the future," Jennifer replied, clinking her glass. Outside, the rain had started to fall on New York City, washing the streets clean, somewhere in a lonely cell. Preston Walsh was staring at a concrete wall, but in the ballroom, Beatrice Williams was surrounded by light. She had lost a seat for 10 minutes, but she had won the world. And as the band started to play, Beatrice didn't just sit there. She stood up. "Come on. Mark, Jennifer," she said, pulling them toward the dance floor. "Let's dance. I feel like celebrating." Because in the end, karma hadn't just hit back. It had cleared the runway for takeoff. And that is the story of Beatrice Williams, the CEO, who turned a stolen seat into a corporate revolution. It's a powerful reminder that arrogance often writes checks that reality can't cash. Preston Walsh thought his status made him untouchable, but he forgot that true power isn't about who you know. It's about who you are. Beatrice didn't just win a lawsuit. She dismantled a corrupt system and built a ladder for others to climb up behind her. It just goes to show, never judge a book by its cover, and never assume you know who you're talking to. You might just be talking to the boss. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories about karma hitting back hard, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. What would you have done if you were Beatrice? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay humble, or life will humble you for you.